was remembered as the architect of the entire Iraq War. That's how I was remembered. It got bad to such a point where I had students protesting against me, to the point where I finally had to leave Turkey, and which I loved. At that time, my PhD thesis at Oxford was on the Iraqi security services. My friend operated an online journal on Middle East studies. And so he asked, would you want to take part of your thesis and publish with us? So basically, I gave him chapter 2, which was an explanation of how the Iraqi security services functioned. Remember this kind of the complicated, convoluted networks that you were talking about in Yugoslavia? It was the same in Iraq. And my chapter that became an article kind of explained how the components work. And back in 2002, nobody was looking at this information, never mind being on the internet. So that when I published that article, and I'm doing it as a favor for a friend, I saved it to the last minute, I rushed it and sent it off. And sure enough, by the beginning of 2003, just a few months later, the news breaks that what was my article that was published online, somehow good chunks of it had made it into a British intelligence dossier that had just been given to the British Parliament. And the British Parliament had just voted to go to war against Iraq based on this document that they don't know is plagiarized from my material. Not only that, you see, it's not just plagiarism then. They took some words and made them, just changing a few couple words made all the difference. Basically, they were saying more or less Iraq was supporting Al-Qaeda, which I would have never written, which just was not true. They added a few words like that to make a connection between Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden. And then, of course, padded it with a couple of pages at the end to make the argument for war. So it was just kind of this melange of plagiarized material that was then manipulated to justify the invasion of Iraq. And in the rush to do that, they copied a misplaced comma in my original article, and that's what gave away the plagiarism. Beyond a doubt, you could show my original article with a misplaced comma in September 2002 and connect it to that dossier that Colin Powell took in front of the United Nations and presented as evidence for a Security Council resolution calling for military action against Iraq. That's how far it traveled, from my Oxford dorm room to the United Nations General Assembly.